The badge was sitting on my keyboard when I arrived Monday morning. Not my badge. A new one. Same company logo, same format, but with a different name. Kevin Marshall, Senior Financial Analyst. My name is Diane Carter. I'm the Senior Financial Analyst. Or at least, I was on Friday when I left for the weekend. I picked up the badge, turning it over in my hands. It was activated, ready to use. Someone had processed this through HR, gotten approval, ordered the physical badge, and placed it on my desk over the weekend. All without mentioning anything to me. My computer login still worked. My email was still active. My nameplate was still on my cubicle wall. But there was a stranger's badge on my keyboard, and that badge suggested I wasn't supposed to be here anymore. I looked around the office. It was 8:47 a.m. Most people weren't in yet. The few early arrivals were heads down at their desks, apparently unaware that something was very wrong with this picture. I sat down, set Kevin Marshall's badge aside, and opened my email. Nothing from HR. Nothing from my manager, Patricia Vanstati. No termination notice, no meeting invite, no we need to talk message. Just regular work emails about pending reports and client questions. I checked my calendar. Also normal. Status meeting at 10 a.m., budget review at 2 p.m., one-on-one with Patricia at 4 p.m. If I was being replaced, nobody had bothered to cancel my meetings. Then I noticed something else. My desk drawers had been opened. Not broken into, just unlocked and slightly ajar. Someone had gone through my desk. I pulled open the drawers systematically. Personal items, photos, snacks, spare phone charger were still there. But my work files were gone. The physical folders I kept for major accounts, the backup documentation I maintained, the project notes I'd been accumulating for 3 years. Gone. Cleaned out. Like they were preparing my desk for someone else. I pulled up our shared drive and checked my access. Still there. All my digital files, reports, models, client documentation. I could see everything. Whoever had cleaned out my physical desk hadn't thought to remove my system access yet. That was their first mistake. At 8:52 a.m., Patricia walked past my cubicle. Saw me sitting there. Her face did something complicated. Surprise, discomfort, irritation, before she kept walking without saying anything. She hadn't expected me to be here. That much was obvious. At 9:15 a.m., I got an email from Patricia. Diane, please come to my office when you have a moment. I grabbed Kevin Marshall's badge and walked to Patricia's office. She was on the phone when I arrived, but quickly wrapped up the call when she saw me standing in her doorway. Diane, hi? Close the door, please. I closed the door and sat down, setting the badge on her desk between us. I found this on my keyboard this morning. Would you like to explain what's happening? Patricia looked at the badge like it was a live grenade. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Someone cleaned out my desk over the weekend and left another person's badge on my keyboard. That seems pretty clear, actually. We were going to talk to you this afternoon and at your one-on-one. Talk to me about what? My termination? Because that badge suggests you've already hired my replacement. It's not a termination. It's a restructure. Your role is being eliminated, and we're transitioning responsibilities to Kevin, who has a different skill set that aligns better with where the department is heading. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Patricia, I've been here 3 years. My performance reviews have been excellent. I manage our 3 largest client accounts. And you're restructuring my role away because someone with a different skill set is a better fit. What different skill set does Kevin have? He has experience with automation tools that we're implementing. I literally built the automation tools we use. I designed the financial modeling templates that cut our reporting time by 60%. I trained half the department on the systems we run. What automation experience does Kevin have that I don't? Patricia shifted uncomfortably. This isn't about your performance. It's about strategic direction. When were you planning to tell me about this strategic direction? Today at 4 p.m. After Kevin had already been given my badge and access? After my desk had been cleaned out? You were going to have me sit through a full day of work and then fire me at 4 p.m. We weren't firing you. We were offering you a different position. What position? Junior analyst role in a different department. Reduce responsibilities, but you'd still be with the company. I stared at her. You're demoting me. From senior analyst, managing major accounts, to junior analyst in a different department. And you thought the appropriate way to communicate this was to clean out my desk over the weekend and leave my replacement's badge on my keyboard. The badge being on your desk was a mistake. That wasn't supposed to happen. But the rest of it, the desk cleaning, the role elimination, the demotion offer, that was all planned. You just weren't planning to tell me until after I'd worked a full day today. Patricia didn't deny it. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about this moment. I'd spent 3 years building expertise, managing complex client relationships, creating systems that made the entire department more efficient. And I was being replaced with no notice, no explanation that made sense, and offered a demotion as a consolation prize. If you've ever been quietly replaced, if you've ever found evidence that your job was being eliminated before anyone bothered to tell you, if you've ever been expected to gracefully accept a demotion because the alternative is unemployment, stay with me. Because what my company didn't know was that when they cleaned out my desk, they missed something. One critical file that they should have made sure was gone before trying to replace me. My name is Diane Carter, and I'd been a senior financial analyst at Consolidated Services Group for 3 years. We're a business services firm, accounting, financial planning, audit support for mid-sized companies. I managed financial reporting and analysis for our 3 largest clients, representing about $4.20 million in annual revenue for our firm. I was good at my job. Really good. I'd come in with strong technical skills and spent 3 years developing deep client relationships, building institutional knowledge, and creating efficiencies that saved time and improved accuracy. My clients trusted me. My colleagues came to me with questions. My manager, Patricia, had told me multiple times that I was invaluable. Apparently, invaluable had an expiration date. The problems had started about 6 months ago when our company hired a new CFO, Robert Brennan. Robert came from a large corporate background and immediately started implementing optimization initiatives, consolidating roles, eliminating redundancies, pushing for automation, cutting costs. One of his favorite phrases was doing more with less, which usually meant doing the same amount of work with fewer people for less money. About 2 months ago, I'd noticed Patricia acting differently toward me. Shorter responses to emails, less collaborative in meetings, excluding me from strategic discussions I'd normally be part of. Small things that individually meant nothing but together suggested something was shifting. Then 3 weeks ago, I'd seen Kevin Marshall visiting the office. He'd met with Patricia and Robert, toured the department, and left. When I'd asked Patricia about it, she'd said he was a potential consultant they were bringing in for a special project. Now I knew what the special project was: replacing me. After Patricia's non-explanation about restructuring and strategic direction, I went back to my desk. Kevin Marshall's badge was still sitting on Patricia's desk where I'd left it. My access to systems was still active. My meetings were still on my calendar. I had a decision to make. I could accept the demotion offer and fade quietly into a lesser role. I could quit and walk away. Or I could figure out what was really happening here. I chose the third option. I pulled up our HR portal and searched for Kevin Marshall's name. His employee record was already in the system, processed last Friday. Start date: this Monday. Position: senior financial analyst. Salary: $87,000. My salary was $92,000. They were replacing me with someone who cost $5,000 less annually. Not a huge savings, but consistent with Robert's cost-cutting initiatives. I dug deeper. Kevin's background showed 5 years of experience, mostly at smaller firms. No special automation expertise that I could see from his resume. No unique skills that justified replacing me with him. Then I found something interesting. Kevin's offer letter, attached to his HR file, referenced a recruitment bonus of $15,000 paid upon start date. So they were saving $5,000 in annual salary, but paying $15,000 upfront to hire him. The math didn't make sense from a pure cost perspective. Unless there was another reason they wanted to replace me. I remembered something from 3 months ago. A client meeting where I'd raised concerns about billing practices that seemed questionable. Our largest client, Meridian Industries, was being charged for services that I couldn't verify had been delivered. When I'd flagged this to Patricia, she'd told me not to worry about it, that billing was handled by another department. But I documented my concerns anyway. Not because I was trying to cause problems, but because financial accuracy is literally my job. I'd sent an email to Patricia outlining the discrepancies and suggesting we review the billing records. That email had gone unanswered. The billing discrepancies had continued. And now, 3 months later, I was being replaced. I pulled up my email archive and found the message I'd sent to Patricia. It was still there, along with her non-response. I forwarded it to my personal email, along with several other emails documenting questionable practices I'd noticed over the past 6 months. Then I did something else. I accessed our financial reporting system and pulled the detailed billing records for Meridian Industries for the past year. Services billed, hours reported, invoices generated. I exported everything to a spreadsheet and started analyzing it. Within an hour, I'd identified approximately $340,000 in billed services that had no corresponding work documentation. Services that Meridian had been charged for, but that I couldn't find any evidence we'd actually delivered. That was fraud. Or at least it was close enough to fraud that any auditor looking at these records would have serious questions. I saved my analysis to a secure location and forwarded the summary to my personal email. Then I kept digging. By lunchtime, I'd found similar discrepancies with our other 2 major clients. Not as large as Meridian's, but significant. Probably $180,000 in additional questionable billing across both accounts. Total, over $500,000 in services billed but not clearly delivered. And I was the analyst responsible for these accounts. The person who would be asked questions if anyone ever audited these records. The person whose name was on reports that summarized revenue from these clients. If this ever came to light, I'd be the obvious scapegoat. Unless I wasn't employed here anymore. Unless I'd been replaced by someone who could be told the billing practices were standard procedure and wouldn't ask uncomfortable questions. Suddenly, the replacement made sense. Not strategic direction. Not automation expertise. Risk management. Getting rid of the person who'd noticed problems and replacing her with someone who didn't know enough to question the billing practices. At 2 p.m., I attended the budget review meeting I had been scheduled for. Patricia was there, along with Robert Brennan and 2 other department heads. They went through financial projections, discussed cost targets, reviewed headcount plans. Nobody mentioned that my position was being eliminated. Nobody acknowledged that there was a badge for my replacement sitting on Patricia's desk. They just conducted the meeting like everything was normal. Except Patricia kept avoiding eye contact with me. And Robert kept glancing my way with an expression I couldn't quite read. At 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes before my scheduled one-on-one with Patricia, I got an email. From HR, Angela Foster, the HR director. Diane, please come to HR at 4 p.m. for a meeting with Patricia and myself regarding your employment status. So that was how they were doing this. HR present for the termination conversation. Standard protocol to minimize liability. I replied, I'll be there. Then I did one more thing. I drafted an email to our external auditors, the firm that reviewed our financial statements annually. The email outlined my concerns about billing practices, attached my analysis showing the discrepancies, referenced the emails I'd sent to Patricia that had gone unanswered, and explained that I was being terminated today and replaced with someone new. I didn't send the email. Not yet. But I saved it as a draft, ready to go if needed. At 4 p.m. I walked into the HR conference room. Patricia and Angela were already there, sitting on one side of the table with a folder between them. Diane, thank you for coming, Angela started in that careful HR voice. We wanted to discuss some changes to the organizational structure. You mean my termination? It's not a termination. As Patricia mentioned earlier, your current role is being restructured. We're offering you a different position in the company. She slid a document across the table. Junior financial analyst in the operations department. $68,000 annual salary. You'd be supporting the operations team with financial reporting analysis. I looked at the offer. $68,000. That was a $24,000 pay cut from my current salary. A 26% reduction. For someone with my experience and track record, Dane. This is a substantial demotion, I said. It's a different role with different responsibilities, Angela said. The alternative is that we'd have to proceed with a layoff, which would include 2 weeks severance and COBRA continuation. So my choices are accept a 26% pay cut and demotion or get laid off. Those are the options available? Yes. I looked at Patricia. You know the billing discrepancies I flagged 3 months ago? The ones you told me not to worry about. Her face went very carefully neutral. I don't know what you're referring to. Yes, you do. I sent you an email on August 15th outlining approximately $340,000 in services billed to Meridian Industries that I couldn't verify had been delivered. You never responded. Angela glanced at Patricia. What is she talking about? There was no such email, Patricia said, but her voice wasn't quite steady. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. August 15th, 9, 4:37 a.m. Subject: Meridian Industries billing discrepancy. Review needed. I sent it to you directly. Would you like me to read it aloud? Patricia's face was getting red. Diane, that's not appropriate for this meeting. Actually, it's very appropriate. You're terminating me 3 months after I raised concerns about billing practices that look a lot like fraud. That's retaliation. And if you proceed with this layoff, I'll be providing all my documentation to external auditors, the Department of Labor, and anyone else who might be interested in examining Consolidated's billing practices. Angela's expression had shifted from years HR professionalism to genuine concern. Patricia, what billing discrepancies is she referring to? It's a misunderstanding of standard billing procedures, Patricia said, but she was sweating now. Standard procedures don't include billing for services not delivered, I said. I've analyzed a year of billing records. Meridian isn't the only client being overbilled. I found similar discrepancies with Cascade Tech and Belmont Financial. Do you need to dinner more our Kiwi view a scrady to see? Over $500,000 in questionable billing across our 3 largest accounts. That's absolutely not true, Patricia said, but her voice was shaking. I have detailed documentation. Spreadsheets showing billed services and cross-reference work records. Emails showing that I raised these concerns and was ignored. And a timeline showing that 3 months after raising these concerns, I'm being replaced with someone who doesn't have the background to recognize these discrepancies. Angela looked between us. Diane, are you saying you have evidence of billing fraud? I'm saying I have evidence of significant discrepancies between what we billed clients and what I can document we actually delivered. Whether that's fraud or incompetence, I'll let auditors decide. But yes, I have evidence. And if you proceed with this termination, I'll be sharing that evidence with appropriate authorities. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Angela spoke. Patricia, I think you and I need to discuss this separately. Diane, please give us a moment. I stood up. I'll be at my desk. Let me know when you'd like to continue this conversation. I walked back to my cubicle, heart pounding. That had been a gamble. Threatening to report billing discrepancies could backfire spectacularly. But I'd reached a point where accepting a demotion while potentially being set up as a scapegoat for fraud was worse than the risk of speaking up. 20 minutes later, Angela appeared at my desk. Alone. Diane, I need you to walk me through the billing discrepancies you mentioned. Can you show me what you found? For the next hour, I showed Angela everything. The billing records, the work documentation, the gaps between what clients were charged and what I could verify was delivered. The emails I'd sent to Patricia raising concerns. The timeline showing that my replacement was hired shortly after I'd escalated these issues. Angela took notes. Asked careful questions. Didn't commit to anything but didn't dismiss my concerns either. This needs to be reviewed by our legal team and external auditors, she said finally. In the meantime, I'm putting a hold on any employment action regarding your position. You'll continue in your current role while we investigate these matters. What about Kevin Marshall? He's supposed to start today. His start date will be delayed pending review of the Yumai situation. And Patricia? That's being addressed. For now, you should plan to report directly to Robert Brennan until we sort this out. After Angela left, I sat at my desk trying to process what had just happened. I'd walked into an HR meeting expecting to be fired or demoted. Instead, I'd triggered an investigation into billing practices that could implicate senior management. This was either the smartest or stupidest thing I'd ever done. Time would tell which. Over the next week, things moved quickly. The company brought in external forensic accountants to review billing records. Angela interviewed multiple people in the department. Kevin Marshall's start date was officially postponed indefinitely. Patricia was placed on administrative leave on Wednesday. The official explanation was pending review of departmental procedures, but everyone knew something significant was happening. On Friday, Robert Brennan called me into his office. "Diane, I want to thank you for bringing these billing discrepancies to our attention. I brought them to Patricia's attention 3 months ago. She told me not to worry about it. Yes, we're aware. The preliminary review has found significant issues with how billing was being handled for several major accounts. The discrepancies you identified are real and substantial. What happens now? We're conducting a full audit of all client accounts. We're reviewing billing practices across the department. And we're making personnel changes to ensure this doesn't happen again." Am I still being replaced? No. Your position is not being eliminated. In fact, given your attention to detail and willingness to raise concerns even when it was uncomfortable, we'd like to expand your role. You'd be taking over Patricia's responsibilities as department head with appropriate title and compensation adjustments. I stared at him. "You're promoting me to department head?" "Yes. We need someone in that role who prioritizes accuracy and client trust over hitting revenue targets. You've demonstrated that you're that person." "What about Patricia?" "Patricia's employment has been terminated. The investigation found that she was aware of the billing discrepancies and chose not to address them. She may also face legal consequences depending on what the full audit reveals." "And the clients who were overbilled?" "We're working with our legal team on appropriate remediation. This is going to be expensive and embarrassing, but it's better to address it now than to let it continue or to have it discovered by regulators." 3 weeks after I found Kevin Marshall's badge on my keyboard, I was sitting in Patricia's former office, now my office, reviewing a remediation plan for overbilled clients. The full audit had found over $780,000 in questionable billing across multiple accounts over 2 years. Consolidated Services Group was refunding the money, negotiating settlement agreements with affected clients, and implementing new billing oversight procedures to prevent future problems. Patricia was gone. 2 other people in the department had been terminated for participating in or ignoring the billing practices. Kevin Marshall had been informed that the position he'd been hired for no longer existed, and I was now the director of financial analysis, with a 35% salary increase, a team reporting to me, and a direct line to Robert Brennan for escalating concerns. Angela Foster stopped by my office one afternoon about a month after everything had blown up. "Diane, I wanted to check in with you about how the transition is going." "It's good. Busy, but good. We're making progress on the remediation plan and rebuilding client trust. I also wanted to tell you something. When you came into that HR meeting and threatened to report the billing discrepancies, I thought you were just trying to avoid a layoff. I almost dismissed it as a negotiation tactic. What changed your mind?" "The documentation. You didn't just have vague concerns. You had detailed analysis, specific examples, supporting evidence. That's not how someone bluffs their way out of a termination. That's how someone with real concerns about real problems presents their case." I wasn't bluffing. I was genuinely concerned about what was happening. "I know. And the company is better off because you spoke up instead of just accepting the demotion and walking away quiet." After Angela left, I thought about what she'd said. I could have accepted the demotion. I could have taken the severance and found another job. I could have stayed quiet about the billing issues too. Avoid making waves. But staying quiet would have meant letting the fraud continue. It would have meant clients kept getting overcharged. It would have meant I might be scapegoated later when the problems eventually surfaced. Speaking up had been risky. But silence would have been riskier. 2 months after finding that badge on my desk, I got an email from Kevin Marshall. "Hi Diane, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out because I recently learned more about the circumstances surrounding my hiring at Consolidated. I was told I'd be replacing someone who was leaving voluntarily, and I had no idea that wasn't true. I'm sorry for any role I played, even unknowingly, in what happened. To you. I'm glad to hear things worked out and that you're now leading the department. Best wishes, Kevin." I appreciated the message. Kevin hadn't done anything wrong. He'd been offered a job and accepted it, unaware that he was being used to replace someone who'd become inconvenienced by noticing fraud. I replied, "Kevin, thank you for reaching out. You didn't do anything wrong. You were a victim of poor management decisions just as much as I was. I hope you found a good position elsewhere. Best, Diane." 6 months after the badge incident, I was presenting at a financial professionals conference about ethics and client billing. I'd been invited to speak about the importance of raising concerns even when it's uncomfortable. 6 months ago, I told the audience, I found a stranger's badge on my desk and realized I was being replaced. That morning, I had a choice: accept what was happening or investigate why it was happening. I chose to investigate. What I found was over $780,000 in billing fraud that my employer had been committing against clients. I clicked to the next slide. The company wanted to replace me because I'd raised concerns about billing practices. They thought it would be easier to get rid of the person noticing problems than to address the problems themselves. They were wrong. Here's what I learned from that experience. First, documentation matters. I had emails, spreadsheets, and detailed analysis. That's what made my concerns credible. Second, speaking up is risky, but silence can be riskier. I'd stayed quiet, I'd have been demoted or fired eventually anyway, possibly with blame for the fraud I'd tried to flag. Third, sometimes the right thing and the career-smart thing are the same thing, even though it doesn't feel that way at the moment. After the presentation, a young analyst approached me. She was maybe 26, early in her career. "Ms. Carter, I'm dealing with something similar at my firm. I've noticed discrepancies in how we're recognizing revenue, but when I mentioned it to my manager, I was told to focus on my assigned work. I'm scared that if I push harder, I'll lose my job." "Do you have documentation of the discrepancies?" "Yes. Spreadsheets, examples, specific accounts." "Then document your concerns in writing to your manager. If that doesn't work, escalate to their manager or to compliance. Create a paper trail showing you raised the issue properly. If they fire you for that, you have a wrongful termination claim. But more importantly, you've done the right thing. What if they don't fire me, but just make my life difficult? Push me out gradually? That's possible. But here's the question: what's the alternative? Stay quiet and hope the problems don't blow up? Hope that when they do blow up, you're not the one who gets blamed? I tried that. It doesn't work. The problems don't go away because you ignore them. She nodded slowly. How did you have the courage to speak up? I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified. But I'd reached a point where staying quiet was scarier than speaking up. When you reach that point, courage is easier to find. A year after the badge incident, Consolidated Services Group settled the last of the client remediation agreements. Total cost to the company, $1.20 million, in refunds, settlements, and legal fees. 3 people had been terminated. 1, Patricia, faced criminal charges for fraud. But the company survived. Clients who could have left decided to stay because we'd addressed the problems honestly rather than covering them up. Our reputation took a hit, but we rebuilt it through transparency and improved practices. I was still director of financial analysis, leading a team of 6. My salary had increased 40% from where it was the day I found that badge on my desk. More importantly, I'd built a department culture where people were encouraged to raise concerns, where accuracy mattered more than hitting revenue targets, where doing the right thing was valued. Robert Brennan called me into his office one afternoon. "Diane, I wanted to tell you something. When this all started, when you came into that HR meeting and threatened to blow the whistle on billing practices, I was angry. I thought you were just trying to save your job by making wild accusations." "Now, I know, I saw your face, but you were right. About everything. The billing fraud, the attempt to push you out to eliminate someone who'd noticed problems, the risks to the company if we didn't address it. You were right, and I was wrong. You weren't wrong to implement cost controls. You were just working with bad information from Patricia about why my position should be eliminated. Maybe. But I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why an excellent employee was suddenly being classified as redundant. Should have noticed that the timing was suspicious. What made you finally take the concerns seriously? The documentation. When Angela showed me your analysis, the emails you'd sent, the timeline of events, I couldn't dismiss it anymore. You'd done the work to make your case credible. That mattered. 2 years after finding that badge on my desk, I was promoted again. VP of Finance and Operations, reporting to the CEO with responsibility for all financial functions across the company. The promotion announcement mentioned my commitment to ethical practices and operational excellence. It didn't mention that I'd been hours away from being fired or demoted before uncovering fraud that had nearly destroyed the company. But I remembered. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want you to understand something. This isn't about being a hero or taking down bad management. It's about recognizing when something is wrong and being willing to document it, even when doing so might cost you. When I found that badge on my desk, I could have panicked. Could have just accepted whatever they offered to avoid unemployment. Instead, I asked questions, investigated, documented, and when I found actual fraud, I reported it, even though doing so was risky. The company tried to replace me quietly by leaving a new badge on my desk. They cleaned out my files and prepared my workspace for someone else. They planned to offer me a demotion and assume I'd accept it because I needed the job. They forgot one critical thing. They forgot to make sure I didn't have access to the files that proved what they were really doing. If you've ever found evidence that you're being pushed out, if you've ever noticed problems that management wants to ignore, if you've ever had to choose between staying quiet and speaking up, remember this: documentation is power. Evidence is protection. And sometimes the right thing to do is also the smart thing to do. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Share your own experiences in the comments about times you discovered you were being replaced or times you found evidence of wrongdoing. Those stories help others find the courage to ask the right questions. Remember, they tried replacing me by leaving a badge on my desk. They forgot to check what files I still had access to. That one mistake unraveled their entire plan.